The Mercy's light settled into orbit around Proxima IV, its massive medical bays already preparing for the flood of patients. Captain Chen watched through the viewscreen as smaller medical shuttles deployed toward the surface, each one packed with supplies and personnel. 20 years as a starship captain hadn't hardened her to moments like these, when humanity extended its hand to those in need. "Captain, the Draxian diplomatic vessel is requesting permission to dock," Lieutenant Santos reported from his communication station. "They're sending a delegation of their wounded." Chen nodded. "Grant them immediate clearance and alert Dr. Reed to prepare for scale-compatible surgical suites." The ship's internal communication system chimed softly. "Captain, this is Dr. Reed. We've received the Draxian medical files, but these injuries..." His voice trailed off. "What is it, Doctor?" Chen turned away from the view screen, concerned by the hesitation in his voice. "These aren't typical battle wounds. I'm seeing evidence of experimental bioweapons. Tissue degradation patterns unlike anything in our database." The doctor's voice dropped lower. "If I didn't know better, I'd say someone was testing new weapons on their own people." Chen felt a chill run down her spine. The Galactic Conquests explicitly prohibited biological warfare. If either side was developing such weapons, "Keep this between us for now," she instructed. "Focus on treatment protocols. I'll notify Earth Command through secure channels." As the Draxian shuttle docked, Chen made her way to the medical deck. The ship's corridors hummed with activity, nurses calibrating equipment, xenobiologists reviewing alien anatomies, trauma specialists preparing treatment pods. Humanity had found its place among the stars not through conquest or technological superiority, but through their unparalleled medical expertise. The medical bay doors slid open to reveal organized chaos. Dr. Reed was already working on a Draxian officer, his hands moving with practiced precision as he navigated the alien's complex circulatory system. Nearby, Dr. Lakshmi Patel, the fleet's leading xenoimmunologist, analyzed tissue samples, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Captain," she called, waving Chen over. "You need to see this." On her holographic display, cellular structures writhed and distorted. "These cells show signs of targeted genetic manipulation. This isn't a natural pathogen. It's engineered to attack specific genetic markers." "Draxian markers?" Chen asked. Dr. Patel shook her head. "That's what's strange. The genetic target isn't purely Draxian. It's as if someone was trying to create a pathogen that could jump between species." Before Chen could respond, a commotion erupted across the medical bay. A young Draxian child had been brought in, her scales dulled and flaking, a sign of extreme distress in their species. 4 medics rushed her to an emergency pod, while her mother followed, all 4 eyes wide with terror. "She was fine yesterday," the mother keened in translated speech. Then the rash began, and her breathing. Dr. Reed immediately abandoned his current patient to a surgical assistant and moved to the child's side. "Get me the broad-spectrum xenoantivirals," he ordered, scanning the child's deteriorating vital signs, "and prepare for emergency cryostasis if we can't stabilize her." Captain Chen stepped back, allowing the medical team room to work. Through the viewport, she could see more shuttles approaching, both Draxian and Proximan vessels carrying their wounded and sick. Whatever was happening in this system went beyond the reported conflict. As she returned to the bridge, Chen sent a priority message to Earth Command. Possible biological warfare detected. Request authorization to expand mission parameters and investigate origin. She didn't know then that this discovery would set in motion events that would forever change how the galaxy viewed humanity. Security Chief Keller pressed her back against the crumbling wall as another explosion rocked the medical facility. The air filled with dust and the acrid smell of burning medical supplies. Through her tactical visor, she tracked the movement of Draxian shock troops methodically working their way through the hospital's eastern wing. They weren't just destroying the building. They were hunting. "Dr. Patel, status on the evacuation." She whispered into her comm unit, keeping her breathing steady despite the chaos. "We've moved 60% of mobile patients to the underground bunkers," came the strained reply. "But the critical care unit is still full, and we can't disconnect life support systems without losing patients." Keller swore under her breath. "They're targeting medical personnel first. I've lost 12 security officers trying to hold the main entrance." She checked her sidearm. A non-lethal pulse weapon designed to incapacitate without permanent damage. Standard issue for medical security teams. Her team had never expected to face military-grade weapons. 3 levels below, Dr. Reed worked frantically to stabilize the young Draxian child from the day before. The emergency bunker shook with each impact above, causing vials to rattle on their shelves. The child's mother huddled nearby, her scaled body curled protectively around 2 younger offspring. "I don't understand," she keened softly. "Why would our own military attack healers?" Reed didn't have an answer as he administered another dose of synthesized antibodies. The child's condition had stabilized overnight, proving his treatment protocol effective against whatever engineered pathogen was at work. Perhaps that was precisely the problem. "Dr. Reed." A nurse burst into the treatment area, her uniform torn and smeared with soot. "They breached the main bunker entrance. Chief Keller says we have 3 minutes before they reach this section." Reed looked down at his patient, then to the mother. "We need to move now. The treatment is working, but she needs constant monitoring." He began disconnecting monitoring equipment while keeping the crucial medication drip intact. "Help me get her onto a portable stretcher." The facility's emergency lighting flickered as they transferred the child. Reed could hear weapons fire growing closer, the distinctive hiss-crack of Draxian plasma rifles, followed by the lower-pitched pulse of human defensive weapons. His comm unit activated with Keller's voice. "Reed, get out through Maintenance Tunnel B. It still reads clear on scans. I'm sending 2 of my people to escort you." Her voice was tight with controlled fear. "They're executing medical staff on site. They're checking insignias and targeting doctors first." Across the facility, Captain Chen fought her way toward an emergency shuttle, supporting a wounded nurse with one arm while using her other hand to guide a group of Proximan children. The ship's navigator, Lieutenant Park, had already prepped the shuttle for emergency launch. 30 seconds, Captain, Park called as Chen helped load the last of the evacuees. "The Draxian warships are moving to blockade orbit." Chen strapped herself into the pilot's seat beside Park, her hands flying over the controls. "We'll have one chance to break through their line before they lock down the system." She activated the ship-wide comm. "All personnel, strap in for emergency maneuvers." As the shuttle lifted off, Chen watched through the view screen as the medical facility, a marvel of human engineering and a symbol of interspecies cooperation, erupted in a series of detonations. Strategic explosions designed to destroy specific sections. "They're targeting the research labs," she realized aloud, horror dawning in her eyes. "They're destroying all evidence of the pathogen and our treatment protocols." The shuttle shot skyward, engines straining as they pushed through the atmosphere. Behind them, columns of smoke rose from what had been a place of healing. Ahead, the silhouettes of Draxian warships grew larger against the starfield. Chen's fingers found the quantum communicator, their only hope of telling Earth what had happened here. "This isn't random," she said to Park as she began the transmission. "This is about what we discovered." The silence in the quiet room was absolute. 12 of Earth's highest-ranking officials sat motionless as the final transmission from Captain Chen played for the 3rd time. The footage showed Draxian troops executing medical personnel with methodical precision. The last frame froze on a human doctor being shot while shielding a Proximan child. General Patel stood slowly, her movements deliberate. The weight of command had never felt heavier on her shoulders. "The death toll now stands at 4,822 confirmed," she said, her voice steady despite the emotion behind her eyes. "Over half of our xenomedicine specialists were on that mission. An entire generation of our best healers." Admiral Jackson, commander of Earth's defensive fleet, leaned forward. "The Proximan ambassador is requesting asylum." They believe they're next on the Draxian target list. Granted immediately, Counselor Wei replied, and send medical ships to evacuate any remaining civilians from the Proxima system. The room fell silent again as attention shifted to the holographic display at the center of the table. 3 black ships rotated slowly in the projection. Unmarked, unregistered vessels that officially didn't exist. "The Harbinger teams are ready," said Director Kozlov, head of Special Operations. Her face betrayed nothing, but those who knew her could sense the controlled rage beneath her calm exterior. They've been briefed on what happened at Proxima. Colonel Rodriguez, who had once been a Harbinger before his promotion, cleared his throat. These aren't conventional soldiers. Many were medical personnel themselves before volunteering for the program. That's precisely why they're the appropriate response, General Patel replied. They understand exactly what was lost. The quantum display shifted to show personnel files. 72 men and women with unremarkable appearances. Nothing about them suggested they were anything other than ordinary humans. That was by design. Commander Volkov was a trauma surgeon for 12 years before joining the program, Director Kozlov noted. Lieutenant Tanaka was researching neural regeneration. Captain Liu specialized in xenopathology. She paused. They all lost colleagues at Proxima. Admiral Jackson studied the deployment plan. 3 ships, 24 operatives each. No backup, no extraction plan. They won't need one, Colonel Rodriguez said with quiet confidence. These are the best we have. The council members each placed their hands on the DNA scanners embedded in the table. One by one, their identities were confirmed, and the security locks disengage. Let the record show, General Patel stated formally, that this action is classified under Protocol Omega. No public announcements, no declarations of war, no diplomatic communications. She looked around the table. The Draxians believe they've silenced our healers. They don't need to know we're responding until it's too late. The vote was unanimous. 12 hands raised in solemn agreement. On the far edges of the solar system, 3 stealth vessels received encrypted activation codes. Inside each ship, cryo chambers hummed to life as medical systems began the awakening process. The ship's eye interfaces calculated the most efficient routes through Draxian space, identifying key military installations and command centers. In her private office after the meeting, General Patel reviewed the personnel files one more time. These 72 individuals carried the weight of humanity's response. She paused on Commander Volkov's file, remembering when he had been simply Dr. Volkov, when she had watched him perform impossible surgeries on alien anatomies. "Computer, secure channel to Harbinger command vessels," she instructed. When the connection established, she spoke only 7 words. "Remember why they died. Remember your training." The response came back instantly from all 3 vessels. Precision, discretion, justice. The first Harbinger vessel slipped into dimensional phase shift, vanishing from conventional detection. The others would follow at calculated intervals. The Draxians would never see them coming. Commander Volkov watched through specialized optics as Draxian guards patrolled the perimeter of the lunar military base. His breathing remained calm and measured. The same controlled rhythm he once maintained during 12-hour surgeries. 20 meters to his left, Lieutenant Tanaka had already disabled the sector's motion sensors. Behind him, Sergeant Y planted quantum disruptors that would scramble communications when activated. The Harbingers had arrived in Draxian space 30 hours earlier. Their ship, the Nemesis Asterisk, now orbited the dark side of Drax Prime's largest moon, its advanced stealth systems rendering it invisible to even the most sophisticated detection arrays. Central Command Post identified. Tanaka's voice whispered through their neural comm system. Admiral Zex Tan's biometric signature confirmed inside. Volkov nodded once, though the gesture was unnecessary with their neural link. Proceed with infiltration. Remember the protocols. The 3 Harbingers activated their adaptive camouflage, their forms blending seamlessly with the environment as they approached the base. Unlike the bulky combat armor favored by conventional military forces, Harbinger field suits were lightweight and flexible, prioritizing movement and stealth over brute protection. Guard rotation in 30 seconds, Wei reported. Southeastern entrance will be optimal. As predicted, the guards shifted positions, creating a 5-second window in the patrol pattern. The Harbingers moved through it like shadows, their movements precise and economical. No wasted energy, no unnecessary risks, surgical in every sense. Inside the facility, they separated according to their mission parameters. Wei headed for the communications center, Tanaka for the security hub, and Volkov for the command level where Admiral Zexton had taken up residence. Volkov navigated the corridors with the help of schematics they had extracted from Draxian military databases during their approach. His augmented vision highlighted life signs behind walls and doors, allowing him to avoid unnecessary encounters. The objective wasn't to eliminate every Draxian soldier, it was to surgically remove those responsible for the attack on the medical fleet. The commander paused outside the admiral's quarters, listening to the Draxian leader barking orders at subordinates. Through the door, he could hear fragments of conversation. Ensure no evidence remains. Humans have no proof of our involvement. The pathogen research must be relocated. Volkov's neural implant recorded everything, adding to the evidence they were collecting across Draxian space. Justice would require proof. When the subordinates left, Volkov waited 3 minutes for the admiral to lower his guard. The specialized toxin injector felt cool against his palm, loaded with a compound specifically designed for Draxian physiology. As a surgeon, he had once used his knowledge to heal. Now that same intimate understanding of xenobiology made him the perfect instrument of justice. The door's security system yielded to his specialized decryption tool. Inside, Admiral Zexton was reviewing battle plans on a holographic display. Future targets marked across Proxima space. More massacres in planning. The admiral didn't hear Volkov enter. Didn't sense his presence until the injector pressed against the neural cluster at the base of his skull. Didn't have time to call for help before the toxin took effect, paralyzing his body while leaving his mind fully aware. Admiral Zexton, Volkov spoke softly, switching his translator to Draxian formal dialect. I am Harbinger Actual. You ordered the execution of 4,822 medical personnel and patients under their care. The admiral's 4 eyes widened in recognition and fear. The rumors of human shadow operatives were true. Before you received your commission, Volkov continued, circling to face the paralyzed Draxian. You were treated for Cassin's syndrome by a human doctor on Proxima Station. Dr. Elinga Reyes saved your life 18 years ago. He displayed a holographic image of the doctor, one of the first casualties at the medical facility. She recognized your name in the transmission logs just before your forces killed her. General Vrax paced the command bridge of the Draxian flagship *, Inevitable Conquest *, his talons clicking against the polished floor. 3 days had passed since contact was lost with Admiral Zexton's lunar headquarters. 2 major weapons manufacturing facilities had gone dark in the hours that followed. Now, inexplicable system failures cascaded through the Imperial fleet. Another communication relay has failed, General, reported his second-in-command, Sub-Commander Krell. That's the 7th in the outer ring. Vrax hissed in frustration, his scales darkening with anger. How is this possible? Our systems are isolated and redundant. Sir, we're receiving an emergency transmission from High Command. The communications officer interrupted, her voice wavering. It's broadcasting on all frequencies. The main view screen flickered to life, but instead of the expected Draxian official, the screen displayed footage from the Proxima Medical Station attack. The horrific images showed Draxian soldiers executing human medical personnel and patients. The timestamp indicated this was playing simultaneously across all Draxian communication channels, military and civilian alike. Shut it down. Vrax commanded, his voice rising. Override the broadcast. I can't, sir, the officer replied, fingers flying over her console. The transmission is bypassing all security protocols. In that moment, The lights on the bridge dimmed momentarily. When they returned to normal, 3 command staff at the tactical station slumped forward, thin projectiles protruding from the neural clusters at the bases of their skulls. Pandemonium erupted as security personnel drew weapons, firing at shadows. Vrax felt something pierce his arm, a small dart that burned like ice as it delivered its payload. Not lethal, he realized as his limb went numb. A warning. General Vrax. A calm human voice addressed him from the ship's communication system. This is Harbinger 7. Your weapons targeting systems have been compromised. Your communications network has been infiltrated. Your command structure is being systematically dismantled. The bridge fell silent as the meaning became clear. Humans were aboard the flagship, their most secure vessel. Impossible, Vrax whispered, his voice suddenly dry. Our internal sensors would have. Your sensor technology is based on research stolen from the Princeton Medical Research Station 3 years ago, the voice interrupted. The same station where we developed countermeasures. On the primary tactical display, red warning indicators began blinking across the star map. Key military installations throughout Draxian space were going offline one after another. Not destroyed, precisely disabled. The bioweapon you deployed against your own people to justify attacking our medical mission has been neutralized, continued the voice. The treatment protocol developed by our doctors, the ones you executed, has been distributed to civilian medical centers across your empire. Vrax felt cold dread spreading through him, matching the numbness in his arm. What do you want? He finally asked. Justice, came the simple reply. Look at your display. The tactical screen shifted to show a new image. The Draxian Emperor himself, unconscious but alive, being placed in what appeared to be a stasis chamber by figures in adaptive camouflage suits that partially obscured their human features. Your Emperor has been remanded into custody to face trial for crimes against sentient beings, the voice explained, along with 37 military commanders who ordered the Proxima attack. Vrax watched in stunned silence as more status indicators turned red across the display. The mighty Draxian war machine was being systematically paralyzed, not through overwhelming force, but through precisely targeted interventions by what must be an incredibly small human strike force. We came to your worlds to heal, the voice concluded as the bridge lights flickered once more. Remember that when you stand before the Galactic Tribunal. Emperor Vexmore felt the cold sweat beating between his scales as he frantically searched through classified archives. The Imperial bunker, buried 2 kilometers beneath the palace, had been designed to withstand orbital bombardment. Yet somehow, the security systems had been compromised. The elite guard stationed outside his door had fallen silent 20 minutes ago. His clawed fingers trembled as he entered another security override, accessing files that hadn't been viewed in decades. The holographic display flickered with reports dating back to humanity's first contact with the Draxian Empire. Initial genetic analysis of human tissue samples shows unprecedented cellular adaptability. Read one report, authored by the Imperial Science Directorate. Their stem cells can be modified to repair damaged tissue in virtually any carbon-based life form. Vexmore scrolled forward through the years of research, his eyes widening as the true picture emerged. Another report, marked with the highest security classification, detailed the findings. Human genetic structure contains elements that would render our biological warfare division obsolete. Their inherent immunity-sharing capabilities threaten our military advantage. Recommendation: restrict all medical and scientific exchange with Earth. The Emperor had inherited this policy from his predecessor, never questioning the restrictions placed on human medical missions. When reports emerged of humans treating wounded on both sides of the Proximan conflict, he had simply followed the established protocol: contain and eliminate the threat. Now, as he stared at decades of deliberate suppression of medical advancement, the weight of the decision crushed down on him. The Draxian Empire had sacrificed millions of its own citizens to preventable diseases, all to maintain a military advantage that now proved worthless against the very humans they feared. "You've been reading for some time, Emperor. Found anything illuminating?" The voice came from behind him, speaking perfect Hydraxian, with only the slightest human accent. Vexmore whirled around, reaching for the ceremonial dagger at his belt, only to find it missing. Commander Volkov stepped from the shadows, the Emperor's own dagger held loosely in his hand. "Your guards are unconscious, not dead. We're not murderers." "How?" the Emperor began, but Volkov cut him off with a raised hand. "Your security systems were designed by graduates of the Draxian Military Academy. 3 of my team studied there under diplomatic exchange programs before you terminated all cooperation." Volkov approached the holographic display, scanning the documents still visible. "I see you've discovered the real reason behind the attack on our medical mission." The Emperor's 4 eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of extreme stress in Draxian physiology. "You would have rendered our greatest weapon obsolete." "Not a weapon," Volkov corrected. "A gift. Human cellular compatibility isn't a military advantage. It's an evolutionary adaptation. Our species developed on a planet with exceptional biodiversity and pathogenic pressure. We evolved to heal not just ourselves, but others." He reached into a pocket and removed a small vial containing an iridescent blue liquid. "This is the treatment for the engineered pathogen your military released. The one Dr. Reed successfully synthesized before your troops executed him." Volkov placed the vial on the desk between them. "We've already distributed it to civilian hospitals across your empire. Millions of your citizens will live because of the work of the doctors you ordered killed." The Emperor stared at the vial, then back at the human standing before him. "Why would you save our people after what we did to yours?" "Because that's what we do," Volkov replied simply. "That's what you tried to eliminate." He produced a small injector from another pocket. "Your trial begins in 48 hours before the Galactic Tribunal. Representatives from 27 species will hear evidence of your crimes." Emperor Vexmore's scales flattened against his body in resignation. "And what of our empire without its emperor?" "Your people are already choosing new leadership," Volkov said, administering the sedative with medical precision. "Leaders who understand that healing isn't a threat. It's salvation." General Patel stood before the assembled representatives of the Galactic Council, her posture perfect, her expression resolute. The Grand Chamber, with its soaring crystalline dome and ancient wooden podium, had witnessed countless diplomatic crises over the centuries, but never before had the delegates seen evidence like what now played on the massive displays surrounding them. The footage showed Harbinger teams systematically dismantling the Draxian military machine, not through wanton destruction, but through precisely targeted operations. Weapons platforms disabled rather than destroyed. Command centers infiltrated with surgical precision. Bioweapon research facilities secured and contained. The operation lasted 15 days, Paddle explained, her voice carrying clearly through the hushed chamber. 72 operatives. No civilian casualties. 43 high-ranking Draxian officials taken into custody to stand trial for war crimes. The Centaurian delegate rose, his crystalline form refracting light as he moved. "The footage is disturbing in its efficiency, General. Many of us had no idea Earth possessed such capabilities." Patel nodded once, acknowledging the unspoken question. "Earth has maintained defensive capability since our first ventures into interstellar space. The Harbinger program represents a small, specialized component of those capabilities, one we have never before had cause to deploy. Yet you chose a measured response," observed the Rigelian ambassador, her feathered crest rising in what her species considered thoughtful surprise. "Your force could have easily destroyed the Draxian homeworld." "That was never our intention," Paddle replied firmly. "Our response targeted those responsible for the attack while minimizing broader harm. The same ethical principles that guide our medical missions guided our response to their violation." On the main display, footage now showed Harbinger teams securing Draxian bioweapon facilities and distributing treatment protocols to civilian hospitals. Many delegates shifted uncomfortably, recognizing the dichotomy this revealed. humans providing medicine to the very civilization that had slaughtered their healers. The Proximan representative, whose people had suffered under Draxian aggression for decades, leaned forward. What does Earth want in return for this restraint? General Patel's expression remained measured. 3 things. First, those responsible will face justice before this council. Second, the Draxian transitional government will commit resources to rebuilding the destroyed medical facilities. Third, and most importantly, the prohibition against human medical knowledge sharing will end. She gestured, and the display shifted to show a molecular structure rotating slowly in 3 dimensions. This is the cellular adaptation factor unique to human physiology, the same trait that the Draxian Empire feared enough to murder our doctors. The chamber grew completely silent as the implications became clear. Many species had benefited from human medical expertise, but few understood the full potential of what humanity could offer. Dr. Elena Reyes was developing the Universal Cellular Compatibility Protocol when she was killed. Patel continued, her voice softening slightly at the mention of the doctor's name. Her research didn't die with her. We propose establishing an intergalactic medical exchange program, with facilities accessible to all species. The Draxian interim representative, looking remarkably small without the imperial regalia of his predecessors, spoke hesitantly. And what guarantee do we have that this medical knowledge won't be weaponized against us in the future? General Patel's gaze fixed on him with laser intensity. The same guarantee we offered when we sent unarmed doctors to your worlds while you were developing bioweapons. The same guarantee demonstrated by our response. Precise, measured, and devoted to justice rather than vengeance. She placed both hands on the podium, leaning forward slightly. We will always offer healing first. The Harbingers deploy only when that offer is violently rejected. Sunlight streamed through the vast transparent dome of the new Elena Reyes Memorial Medical Center. The facility, 3 times larger than the one destroyed 6 months earlier, orbited Proxima IV in the exact same position, a deliberate statement about humanity's refusal to be driven away from its healing mission. Dr. Sophia Reyes stood at the podium before the assembled dignitaries from 27 species, her brother's Medal of Honor pinned to her white medical coat. Behind her, a memorial wall displayed the names of every healthcare worker who had died in the attack. Their faces, rendered in luminescent crystal, seemed to glow with an inner light. My brother once told me that medicine is the universal language, she began, her voice steady despite the emotion visible in her eyes. He believed that healing transcends species, politics, and conflict. Today we honor that belief by opening not just a hospital, but a new chapter in intergalactic cooperation. The gathered representatives watched in respectful silence. Among them, the newly appointed Draxian ambassador Krulvan stood with head bowed, the position of deepest respect in Draxian culture. This facility contains technology and expertise from every major civilization represented here today, Dr. Rice continued. For the first time, we will openly share the cellular compatibility techniques unique to human physiology, allowing us to develop treatments for conditions previously considered untreatable. At the back of the gathering, standing unobtrusively among the medical staff, Commander Volkov watched the ceremony. He had retired from the Harbinger program 3 weeks earlier, returning to his original calling as an emergency medicine specialist. Few present knew of his role in the events that had made this day possible. As the ribbon-cutting ceremony concluded, Ambassador Krulvan approached Dr. Rice, her scaled hands trembling slightly as she extended them in the traditional human gesture of greeting. "My daughter would have died if not for your brother's treatment," the ambassador said, her translator conveying the emotion in her native speech. "When our forces attacked, she was one of the children he shielded with his own body." She hesitated, then added, "I was a provincial medical administrator before the regime change. I saw firsthand how our government withheld treatments that could have saved millions." Dr. Rice took the ambassador's hands in her own. "Then you understand why this center must succeed." Near the memorial wall, Volkov found himself standing beside General Patel, who had arrived without ceremony or entourage. "How does it feel to be back in scrubs instead of tactical gear, Doctor?" she asked quietly. Volkov's expression softened, like coming home. The Harbinger program was necessary, but this... He gestured toward the medical bays where human doctors worked alongside alien colleagues. "This is why we fought." General Patel nodded. "The Harbingers have returned to standby status. All 72 operatives have resumed their previous roles in society. Most, like you, returned to medical practice. And the Draxian High Command. The trials concluded yesterday. Justice has been served." She turned to face him directly. "The Galactic Council has ratified the Universal Medical Exchange Treaty. Every signatory species now has access to human cellular compatibility techniques." As the ceremony concluded, representatives from each species approached the memorial wall. One by one, they placed their handprints, scaled, feathered, crystalline, tentacled, into the scanning plate. Each print was permanently added to the wall's design, a living testament to the new unity. Above the main entrance, the facility's mission statement glowed in multiple languages. "We come to heal. Remember why we come." And in smaller text below, "We will defend this mission at all costs. Remember this too."